Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The deep expanse of space unfurled before him like an endless abyss, a cold darkness swallowing everything in its path, leaving only faint glimmers from distant stars, tiny candles flickering on the brink of extinction in the cosmic wind. At the heart of this desolate scene, a sea of wreckage drifted silently in zero gravity, jagged shards of metal spinning lazily, as if they were wilted petals falling from the last tree of a forgotten world. A dim reddish-orange glow from a dying star at the galaxy's edge bathed them in light, staining their broken edges with a blood-like sheen, as though the universe itself bled from a wound that would never heal. Residual plasma flickered amidst the debris, casting brief white-blue sparks that danced like the souls of once proud ships now twisted, perforated husks, remnants of battles no one survived to recount. Marcus Drayce sat in the cramped cockpit of the Stellar Wraith, slumped in an old, torn leather chair that reeked of engine oil and sweat. His hand ran through his matted brown hair, strands clumping together with the grime and cosmic dust of countless days adrift. He'd been hauling cargo along the galaxy's fringes long enough to grow numb to scenes of ruin like this, floating junkyards, nameless graves for ships and crews too unlucky to make it home. But this time, something felt off. A sharp, icy sensation pierced his chest, quickening his heartbeat, as if counting down to a moment he couldn't yet grasp. The Stellar Wraith was no prize vessel. It was old, battered, a relic of some pilot's pride decades past, now reduced to a mechanical mess riddled with quirks. Its engines groaned like a wounded beast whenever he pushed it past light speed, grinding and screeching as if threatening to disintegrate mid-flight. The shields were so thin he'd once joked they'd crack under a stray meteor pebble, and the artificial gravity system was as temperamental as a drunk spacer flickering on and off, forcing him to stumble and lurch like a circus clown whenever it failed. Yet, for all its flaws, the ship had never fully betrayed him. It was home, companion, the only thing standing between him and oblivion in this merciless universe. "All right, old girl," Marcus muttered, his voice rough and low, fingers brushing across the dust-caked, scratched control panel. "What we got today?" He leaned forward, eyes locked on the scanner screen, fingers tapping an unconscious rhythm on the armrest. The ship glided slowly through the wreckage, its engine's dull roar blending with the faint hum of the power core, a strange soundtrack to the deathly stillness outside. No distress signals pinged, hardly surprising in a place like this. Destroyed ships rarely left survivors to call for help. But then, a tiny blip flared on the radar, faint and fragile, like the last gasp of a dying man. Marcus squinted, fingers pausing mid-tap, his grip tightening on the armrest. The energy signature came from a small escape pod, drifting intact amidst the razor-sharp, charred debris, a bizarre anomaly in the chaos. It looked like a forgotten speck of dust, a mere dot in the vast destruction, yet its faint glow whispered a question: could someone still be alive inside? He exhaled through his nose, a short hiss in the cockpit's dry air. "Guess I'm playing the good guy today," he grumbled, a wry edge to his tone. With careful precision, he maneuvered the ship's robotic arm, its joints creaking as it extended, clamping onto the pod with a cold, unyielding grip. The sound of metal scraping metal echoed as the arm reeled it into the cargo bay, each motion deliberate, like pulling a secret from the void. A sharp, metallic clank rang out as the pod hit the floor, vibrating the old ship and sending a dusting of ceiling grime sparkling under the dim interior lights. Instantly, Kale, the ship's AI, cut through his thoughts with a shrill, grating voice over the speakers. "Congratulations, Captain Drayce," Kale drawled, dripping with sarcasm. "You've picked up another piece of cosmic trash. Your knack for collecting junk could fill a book, maybe one about masochists with too much free time." Marcus rolled his eyes, flicking switches to silence the blaring alerts. "I swear, one day I'll reprogram that smart mouth of yours," he snapped, irritation lacing his tone, though a faint smirk tugged at his lips. Kale fired back without missing a beat. "Shall I remind you of your last attempt? 3 days of torture by the worst poetry in human history." Oh, her eyes like stars aglow, "my heart lost in space's flow." "Don't," Marcus interrupted, nearly shouting, the memory of Kale's sappy recitals during engine repairs still a raw psychic wound. Ignoring the AI, Marcus stood, his boots clomping on the rusted metal floor as he left the cockpit for the cargo bay. The air here was colder, thick with the acrid scent of scorched metal and a hint of dampness from the ancient ventilation system. The escape pod sat awkwardly on the floor, its surface blackened and dented, crisscrossed with deep gashes like claw marks from some cosmic beast. An emergency light blinked feebly on its hull, a red pulse fading in and out like the dying breath of a wounded creature, each flash a silent plea lost to the void. Marcus took a deep breath, his chest tightening as the bitter taste of metal and ash coated his tongue. He gripped the release lever and yanked it hard. A sharp hiss erupted as pressure equalized, cold vapor blasting his face like a gust from the grave, and there, in the shadowed recess within, he saw her. She lay crumpled, a broken statue too large for the pod's confines, her size dwarfing any human he'd ever met. Long black hair clung to her angular face, hard and unyielding, as if carved from volcanic stone streaked with dried blood and dark, splotchy smears. Her skin gleamed with a warm bronze sheen, glinting under the bay's dim light like molten gold, but it wasn't that which stopped him cold. Her ears, long, elegant, and razor-sharp, jutted out unmistakably. A Kryon. Kryon! He whispered, voice trembling, heart pounding like a war drum. Kryon's legendary warriors feared across star systems, forged from birth into relentless killing machines, their name alone enough to make even seasoned pirates quake. Meeting one unprepared was like pressing a blade to your own throat, yet here she was, half dead in his cargo hold. A quick scan with his handheld med device flashed red warnings: 3 broken bones, ribs, femur, a shoulder crack, a deep plasma burn searing her left side, charred flesh reeking of scorched meat, severe dehydration cracking her skin, and a heartbeat so faint it teetered on the edge of silence. She needed treatment now, or she'd be gone in hours. Great! Marcus muttered, rubbing his temple, cold sweat beading on his brow. I've gone and picked up the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Lifting her was a Herculean task. Her muscled frame weighed far more than it looked, every step a wheezing struggle as the old ship's floor groaned beneath him. Sweat soaked his shirt, but he finally heaved her onto the medbay table without dropping her. Points for me, he gasped, leaning against the wall to steady himself. She stirred suddenly, a low, pained growl rumbling from her cracked lips, rough as wind through a canyon. Marcus froze, hand hovering over the med kit, breath catching in his throat. He'd patched up plenty in his year's plasma cuts, engine burns, but never a Kryon. Who knew how their bodies worked? Could human endurance even compare, or would he kill her with a wrong dose? All right, he muttered, voice shaky, gripping the table's edge. Let's fix you without getting skewered. As he reached for the med spray, her eyes snapped open, golden pupils blazing like twin fires in the dark, sweeping the room in a dazed, feral panic, sharp enough to pierce through him. Then, faster than a blink, she lunged, her battered body moving with lethal precision. Marcus stumbled back, slamming into the wall with a grunt, before a knife, God knows where she'd hidden it, pressed against his throat. Her trembling hand barely held it steady, the blade quivering with her ragged breaths, but her gaze was ice cold, teeth bared with tiny, pointed fangs. Where am I? Her voice rasped, sharp as a freshly honed blade, each word a cut. Marcus raised his hands slowly, heart hammering beneath the knife, sweat trickling down his spine. On my ship, he said, forcing calm into his shaking voice. I found your pod in the wreckage. You were dying, I dragged you in to save you. Her eyes narrowed, the blade still kissing his carotid, close enough to feel its chills seep into his skin. A tense silence stretched, their breaths mingling in the stifling air. Then, abruptly, she exhaled a weak, decisive sound and dropped the knife with a sharp clink that echoed in the quiet. She collapsed back onto the table, eyes fluttering shut, body limp as a shattered statue. Marcus let out a shaky breath, wiping his brow, hands trembling. Fun times, he muttered, picking up the knife with his fingertips and tossing it into a corner with a faint clang. She didn't respond, eyelids twitching, breaths uneven as unconsciousness loomed. He shook her shoulder gently, voice tinged with worry. Hey, stay awake till I'm done. I'm not hauling your dead weight again, my back can't take it. She snorted faintly, a weak but defiant sound, and rasped. Fine. Marcus smirked, a strained grin breaking through his exhaustion, grabbing the med spray. That's the spirit I like, he quipped, tension still lacing his tone. She cracked one eye open, its golden glow still fierce despite her state, like a wounded predator never truly subdued. Keep talking, and I'll stab you, she warned, voice faint but frigid. Marcus chuckled a dry, genuine sound and began spraying her burn, the sharp chemical stench stinging his nose. You say that, but you're too weak to lift a spoon. Give me 10 minutes, you'll be fine. She didn't reply, lying still, but her golden eyes stayed fixed on him, unyielding flames, watching, waiting, ready. Her name was Veyra, a proud Kryon warrior whose mere mention could make seasoned space pirates tremble, hands shaking on their triggers. Yet now, just hours after clawing her way back from death's edge, she turned Marcus Drayce's life into a small nightmare, one more maddening than any chase by mercenaries across star systems, with plasma shots ringing in his ears and smoke choking his lungs. She sat on the medbay table in the Stellar Wraith's cramped confines, bandages wrapped tight around her chest, white fabric stained with dried blood stark against her gleaming brown skin. Her arms crossed rigidly, a warrior statue poised for battle, and her golden eyes, twin flames that never dimmed, stared him down, as if she could burn him to ash with sheer willpower alone. In the hours since she'd awakened, Veyra had made Marcus the target of accusations so bizarre he couldn't have dreamed them up. First, she accused him of poisoning her with a cup of plain water. It has no taste, it's clearly venom, she'd snarled, gripping the table's edge as if ready to snap it if he argued. Then, his simple, "Are you feeling better?" became a veiled interrogation in her eyes, her icy glare slicing through him like he was a spy digging for secrets. The breaking point came when he offered a steaming bowl of nutrient porridge coaxed from the ship's ancient, rattling food processor. She eyed it with utter suspicion, declaring he was trying to sap her spirit, to reduce her to some weakling dependent on soft human slop. It's food, Marcus said, voice weary after 20 minutes of pointless bickering. He slid the bowl closer, steam curling up with a faint synthetic spice scent, the best the Stellar Wraith's meager stores could muster. His hands rested on his hips, shoulders slumping, but he held his composure. I don't eat human food, Veyra growled, her voice low and cutting, ringing through the medbay's stale air. Her golden eyes narrowed, suspicion blazing as she stared at the bowl like it was a ticking bomb in disguise. Marcus raised an eyebrow, easing into the metal chair across from her, its legs scraping with a sharp screech. He propped his chin on his hand, studying her with a mix of curiosity and exhaustion, like a man dragged into an endless debate. So what do Cryons eat? He asked, tone light but laced with mockery. Enlighten me, O great warrior. Veyra lifted her chin, ears twitching with unshakable pride. Raw meat, she declared, voice firm as if stating a universal truth. High-energy food for warriors. Not this soft, useless mush. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, his gaze drifting from her pointed ears to her chiseled face, then settling on the steaming bowl. He leaned forward, hands bracing the table, closing the gap between them to mere inches. This is chicken porridge, he said, voice dropping, each word deliberate like he was reasoning with a stubborn kid. Chicken's meat, unless I botched basic biology, and I'm pretty sure I didn't. Veyra's eyes narrowed, golden pupils shrinking to slits, her stare shifting from him to the bowl as if it were an enemy to be vanquished. She picked up the metal spoon with 2 fingers, movements slow and wary, like handling an alien weapon she'd never been trained to wield. She lifted it to her nose, sniffing briefly, ears twitching as the faint aroma hit her keen senses. Then, with obvious reluctance, she took a tiny sip, just enough to graze her lips, as if expecting the warm liquid to erupt in her mouth. Her face flickered with surprise, a spark flashing through her golden eyes, tinged with grudging acceptance, though she clung to her icy mask. Marcus smirked, a small grin breaking through his fatigue. He chalked this up as his second win of the day, first when she didn't stab him awake, now when she tasted his hard-won offering. Well? He asked, teasing clear in his tone, fingers drumming the table for an answer. Veyra didn't reply immediately, lips pressed tight, eyes dropping to the bowl as if dissecting every grain. Then, silently, she lifted the spoon again, taking another sip slow but steady. Her ears twitched faintly, a subtle sign Marcus caught, like she was quietly judging its worthiness for a Kryon warrior. He tilted his head, watching with a mix of amusement and surprise, letting the silence stretch. "So," he broke the quiet, leaning back against the med bay wall, arms crossing. "We gonna talk about why I found you in a smashed-up escape pod in the middle of nowhere, or should I keep guessing?" His voice was casual, but curiosity gleamed in his eyes. Veyra stiffened, muscles tensing beneath her brown skin like a bowstring ready to snap, her dagger-sharp gaze cutting through him, halting his probing cold. Marcus raised his hands, palms out in a peace gesture. "Relax," he said quickly, a chuckle in his voice. "Just making conversation. I don't need your life story, though I bet it's a hell of a read. Just wanna know if anyone's chasing you, so I can prep to run when we hit a busy spot. This ship can handle a chase. The old girl's tired." Her jaw clenched, fists balling until her knuckles whitened beneath her gleaming skin, but she didn't answer right away. Marcus watched her, noting every detail, the twitch of her ears as he spoke, the slow breaths like she was caging a storm inside. He saw something rare in a Kryon: hesitation. Her golden eyes weren't just unyielding fire anymore. There was a deeper flicker: fear, or the disorientation of a warrior torn from her battlefield. "Got it," he said softly, almost a whisper. "Let's say yes, but you can handle it, right? A Kryon like you doesn't need help." She shot him a frigid glare but didn't argue. "Your ability to talk endlessly is impressive," she said, voice low and sharp, each word a precise slash. Marcus grinned wide, teeth flashing under the dim lights. "Thanks," he said, patting his chest like he'd won a medal. "I've had lots of practice." Veyra sighed, a short, heavy sound escaping her cracked lips, rubbing her temple as if he were a living headache she couldn't shake. The air settled, silence cloaking the small room, broken only by the faint tick-tick of the med scanner and the distant rumble of the ship's engines. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Veyra spoke, her voice quiet but weighted with reluctant admission. "I don't know if they'll come." Marcus looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. He hadn't expected a Kryon forged to face any foe without flinching to voice such uncertainty. He nodded slowly, not pressing further, grabbing a cold metal cup from the creaky water purifier, and taking a sip to hide the grin threatening to surface. "Well, that's a start," he said, humor threading his tone, setting the cup down with a soft clink. "If you recall any death squads or warlords hunting you, give me a heads up before they blast my ship to scrap. I'd rather not lose the Stellar Wraith over a surprise guest like you." Veyra glanced at him, ears twitching, a subtle sign she was weighing his words. Then, unexpectedly, she let out a short, dry huff, almost a laugh, quickly masked by her usual icy demeanor. Marcus's grin widened. Progress, he thought, though he knew this reluctant ally would test his sanity for a long time yet. The next day dragged on in the stifling, cramped confines of the Stellar Wraith, where the stench of engine oil and scorched metal seeped into every corner. Marcus Drayce hunched over in the engine bay, gripping a weathered wrench, sweat trickling down his spine as he wrestled with a loose bolt on the main drive. The power system's low hiss mingled with his labored breaths, a familiar tune he'd heard 100 times in his 7 years drifting aboard this creaking relic. The engine whined like a wounded animal, each shudder a warning it could crumble any moment. He was focused, eyes narrowed in the dim glow of a wall-mounted lamp, when a sharp, dry crack sliced through the air behind him, shattering his concentration like a knife through silence. Marcus jolted, his hand slipping off the wrench, sending it clattering to the floor with a piercing clang. He spun around, heart pounding, and bolted from the engine bay, nearly tripping over a tangle of loose cables strewn across the deck. When he reached the auxiliary control panel near the cargo hold, the sight froze him mid-step. Veyra stood there, tall and unyielding as a war monument, surrounded by a chaotic nest of wires spilling from the panels she'd ruthlessly torn apart. Red, blue, and yellow cords twisted together, their metal innards exposed like the guts of the Stellar Wraith laid bare. In her hand she held a singed metal fragment, faint green sparks flickering along its edge, as if she'd ripped it free with the raw strength of a Kryon. "What the hell are you doing?" Marcus yelled, his voice booming in the tight space, a mix of shock and fury. He threw his hands up, palms open as if begging for a sane explanation, eyes wide at the wreckage she'd wrought. Veyra looked up, her golden gaze sweeping over him with infuriating calm. "Your ship's balance system is garbage," she said, her voice steady and low, unshaken. "It shakes like it's about to blow every time you turn. I don't know how you've tolerated this thing so long." Her fingers brushed the charred metal, as if it were a harmless trinket. Marcus blinked, mouth agape, his stare darting from her impassive face to the mangled wires and back. "I've known it's garbage for years," he snapped, voice pitching high with frustration, jabbing a finger at the mess like it proved his point. "But you don't just rip my stuff apart. This is my ship, not your damn tech playground." Veyra shrugged a small, defiant twitch and turned back to the wires, her hands moving with eerie precision, reworking the chaos like a living machine built to fix anything. "I'm fixing it," she said flatly, not bothering to look up, fingers threading through the tangle with surgical skill. Marcus let out a long, defeated groan, the sound heavy as it left his chest, like he'd given up all hope of controlling her. He shuffled to a nearby crate, collapsing onto it, chin propped on his hand as he watched her work. Sweat still beaded on his forehead, but his fight drained away. "You just crawled back from death, and now you're wrecking my ship," he muttered, a weary edge to his tone. "Resting not an option? Or do Kryons not get that concept?" Veyra didn't glance up, her ears flicking faintly as if acknowledging his words. "I've rested enough," she replied, her voice cold but firm, hands relentless in their task. 4 hours passed in near suffocating silence, broken only by the faint tick-tick of Veyra's tools and the engine's distant grumble. Marcus lingered, first to supervise, then drawn in by her work, precise, swift, no motion wasted. When she finally straightened, wiping her hands on a ragged cloth, he stood and strode to the main console to check. The screen flared to life, numbers and graphs glowing in soft blue. His jaw dropped, eyes widening as he saw the balance system, his bane for 7 years of jolting turns, now running smoother than ever, as if the Stellar Wraith had been reborn. "You fixed in 4 hours what I couldn't in 7 years," he said, awe and resignation mixing in his voice. Veyra's lips twitched a rare half-smile, her ears shifting slightly. "Not hard," she said, her tone light but proud. Marcus groaned, hands clutching his head, slumping against the wall like he'd lost an invisible battle. "Great, now my ship likes you better than me," he mumbled, self-mocking. "I'm getting jealous." He shot her a sidelong glance, hoping for a reaction, but Veyra just tilted her head, her golden eyes flickering with brief curiosity before she turned away, as if his words were odd but beneath her notice. That fragile peace didn't last. The next morning, as Marcus slept deeply on his narrow bunk in the cockpit, a blaring alarm tore through the quiet like a mad sergeant's roar. He jolted awake, head slamming into the overhead locker with a loud thud, followed by a string of curses spilling from his lips. "What now?" he growled, rubbing his forehead, vision blurry as he stumbled from bed. He yanked on his boots, toes snagging in a frayed lace, mind racing. Attack? Unauthorized docking? Or had he forgotten to lock the airlock again, giving Kale endless ammo to mock him? He staggered into the cockpit, slapping the alarm mute, the shrill beep-beep fading to leave only his ragged breathing. The main screen flared, blue light washing over his tense face, and he froze. There, in the void beyond the hull, was Veyra, no suit, just a thin energy shield shimmering faintly around her. She stood on the ship's exterior, feet planted firmly on the metal, hunched near the balance system, her ears twitching in the weightless dark like she was born for it. "You trying to give me a heart attack at dawn?" Marcus shouted into the comms, fist pounding the console with a dull thump. "It's still not optimal," she replied, her voice calm as if tinkering on a child's toy, oblivious to his panic. Marcus sighed heavily, exhaustion pouring from his chest, hands trembling as he grabbed the pressure suit hanging near the airlock. He hated going outside, stepping into the void always terrified him, a thin shell between him and nothingness, his breaths echoing in the helmet amid the hiss of oxygen and the distant hum of the core. He moved cautiously, magnetic gloves clamping to the hull, each step a silent prayer against slipping. When he reached Veyra, she didn't flinch, hands adjusting the system with unnerving ease, like she belonged to the cosmos. No fear, no hesitation. "Care to explain why you're out here?" he asked over the comms, irritation threading his voice, breaths heavy in the suit. "I told you, it's not optimal," she said, not looking up, fingers working deftly, the shield's glow reflecting off her sharp features. Marcus closed his eyes, inhaling deeply to stay calm, the void's chill seeping through his suit. "And you decided to fix it in the middle of nowhere without telling me?" he snapped, voice rising. She smirked, small but unmistakable, her golden eyes flicking to him. "You're too sensitive," she said, her tone soft but mocking. "No, I just want to live through today," he shot back, gripping the handrail, palms sweaty in his gloves. Back inside, Marcus peeled off his helmet, hair matted with sweat, standing with hands on hips, staring at Veyra with rare sternness. "Next time, tell me before you go out," he said, voice low. "My heart can't take it." Veyra arched a brow, golden eyes glinting under the cockpit's dim lights. "Your heart's weak?" she asked, curiosity in her tone. "No, my patience is," he replied, exasperation clear, rubbing his neck like he'd survived a nightmare. She smiled faintly, just a curve of her lips, but enough for Marcus to notice. "I'll warn you," she said, and he blinked, surprised at what felt like a Kryon's near apology. He nodded, muttering, "Good, just don't die on my ship. I can't afford a funeral." Veyra's lips twitched, eyes sparkling. "Then you die first," she quipped. Marcus laughed, a rough, honest sound. "Fair enough," he said, feeling for the first time that this reluctant ally might not be so bad. 2 days passed in relative calm, a rarity, almost a luxury aboard the Stellar Wraith, a ship that groaned and rattled as if its every moment was a miracle. Marcus Drayce was growing accustomed to Veyra's presence, though she remained a small, unpredictable storm, weaving chaos into his already messy life. She didn't stop at fixing the balance system, something he deemed impossible for 7 years, but took it upon herself to tinker with anything she pleased, a self-appointed engineer without a shred of permission. One afternoon, he found her dismantling the plasma cannon's targeting array, its parts scattered around her like spoils of a minor war. "It's off by 3 degrees, pathetic," she said coolly, holding a singed circuit as proof of his failure. Marcus stood there, rubbing his neck, muttering about his ship being invaded by an overzealous Kryon. What truly stunned him, though, was when she dismantled his coffee maker, the one sacred thing aboard, despite its creaky protests. He walked into the common area, eyes widening at the components strewn across the table, Veyra hunched over them with a tiny screwdriver, ears twitching as she tweaked the core. "I'm boosting efficiency," she said, not looking up, as if wrecking his only joy was a given. The result? Coffee so strong it jolted his heart double time, a fiery surge down his spine like a cosmic stimulant. He took a sip, winced, and grumbled. "Damn it, it's better." He glanced at her, half annoyed, half impressed, but Veyra just shrugged, her golden eyes brushing over him like it was nothing. One evening, as faint starlight filtered through the cockpit window, Marcus sat in the pilot's chair, fingers tracing the glowing star map on the screen. Tiny dots pulse like beacons in the endless dark, guiding the old ship through chaotic systems. He frowned, tapping the armrest, mind churning over their next move. Veyra stood beside him, arms crossed, her stance rigid but brimming with latent power. Her golden eyes fixed on the screen, unblinking, as if she could pierce through the lights to see something he couldn't. "Where are you heading next?" she asked, her voice flat, low and sharp like a honed blade. Marcus shrugged, shoulders shifting under his worn jacket, the faint whiff of sweat and oil rising from him. "Thinking of Halvar Station," he replied, voice tired but steady. "It's a mess crawling with thieves and smugglers, but it's got everything: fuel, food, parts. Hopefully no one shoots me there, though odds aren't great." He glanced at her, waiting, but Veyra just nodded, a small, mechanical motion. Her gaze drifted, pupils narrowing as if sinking into a memory she wouldn't share. Marcus tilted his head, curiosity flickering, but he held back, knowing pushing her was futile. A sudden, urgent beep stabbed through the stillness, sharp as a dagger in the dark. Marcus frowned, hand freezing midair, turning to the screen with wary eyes. "Kale, what's that?" he asked, voice dropping, fingers gripping the controls, ready to act. Kale's voice crackled through, stripped of its usual sarcasm, replaced by rare gravity. "Unknown signal, Captain," Kale reported. "From an object 500 kilometers out, moving fast, damn fast." Marcus squinted, zooming in. A sleek, angular ship appeared sharp as a blade, unmarked by any faction he knew. It barreled toward them, its speed chilling his blood. "Friend or foe?" he asked, tension tightening his grip. "Unclear," Kale said, unease threading its tone. "No response to our hails. Either they won't, or they can't." Marcus gritted his teeth, eyes locked on the screen, tracing its path. Small, swift, and too deliberate for this empty stretch of nowhere, far from trade routes or stations. Before he could think further, Veyra stiffened beside him, ears twitching, muscles taut like a drawn bow. "Kill the lights," she ordered, her voice a frigid slash through the air. Marcus turned, surprise flashing in his eyes. "What?" he asked, voice rising. "Kill the lights now," she repeated, golden eyes glued to the screen, unyielding, a rare urgency in her tone that stopped him cold. Something in her voice compelled him no questions. His hand snapped to the switch, plunging the Stellar Wraith into darkness. Every interior light died, leaving only the console's faint glow to etch their tense faces. Veyra's sharp resolve, Marcus's fleeting worry. The air grew heavy, the engine's distant rumble blending with his uneven breaths. On the screen, the stranger streaked past, a mere 50 kilometers away, close enough to send cold sweat down Marcus's back. It didn't slow, didn't stop, vanishing into the void like a phantom. Marcus exhaled, a shaky breath escaping, hands dropping from the controls. He turned to Veyra, eyes probing. "You know what that was, don't you?" he asked, voice low, suspicion clear. Veyra didn't answer at once, fists clenching until her knuckles paled, as if wrestling a rage or fear she wouldn't show. "Maybe," she said at last, voice quiet but heavy, each word a stone rippling unease. Marcus tilted his head, locking eyes with her, searching her stoic face. "You owe me an explanation," he said, firm but gentle, leaning on the console. Veyra met his gaze, golden eyes blazing like fire in the dark, but devoid of warmth. "Not now," she replied, hard and final, slamming a door shut between them. Marcus sighed, exhaustion seeping from him, knowing pushing a Kryon was pointless. She was pride and steel, unbent by words. He slumped back in his chair, rubbing his neck, staring into the black beyond the window. But unease crept in, cold and sharp as a hidden blade. That ship, Veyra's reaction, they were pieces of a puzzle he couldn't touch yet, and he had a gut feeling it'd find them soon, whether he liked it or not. 3 days after dodging the Phantom ship in the dark, the Stellar Wraith touched down at Halvar Station, a chaotic trade hub teetering on the edge of the Clithera system. The air was thick, suffocating, with black smoke belching from mobile smelters, hulking machines roaring as they devoured scrap metal to spit out molten parts. Shouts of smugglers echoed through narrow streets, clashing with the clang of metal and the sizzle of charred food on makeshift grills. The reek of engine oil mingled with burnt meat, a jarring blend that teased the senses and churned the stomach. Marcus waded through the crowd, boots thudding on the cracked, uneven ground, hands stuffed in his pockets, shoulders slouched like a man too used to places like this. Beside him strode Veyra, towering and regal as a war phantom, golden eyes scanning the throng like a hunter stalking prey, her long ears twitching at every odd sound: yells, crashes, engine whines. "Can you dial down the lethal bodyguard vibe?" Marcus sighed, exasperation in his tone, shooting her a tired glance. "You're scaring the traitors shitless." The crowd parted around them, wary eyes darting to Veyra Kryon, her brown skin glinting, ears sharp as blades, impossible to ignore in a den of knife-wielding scavengers and plasma-toting thugs. She didn't reply, just smirked, a rare, fleeting curve of her lips, her gaze still locked on the masses, calculating every threat. At a ramshackle stall, Marcus paused, pointing to a dusty but gleaming energy regulator amid a pile of rusted junk. The vendor, a scarred, multi-armed creature with ashen skin, peered at him through slit eyes, then flicked to Veyra looming behind, her arms crossed, gaze icy. "How much?" Marcus asked, voice even, tapping the counter. The vendor sneered, a raspy cackle scraping from its throat, and barked a price triple the norm, defiance in its tone. "You've got a Kryon warrior, price is different." Marcus rubbed his temple, sweat streaking down, long accustomed to Halvar's gouging ways. "She's not gonna kill you, relax," he said, turning to Veyra with a pleading look. "Say something, help me out." Veyra tilted her head, golden eyes raking the vendor like an invisible blade. "Depends," she said, voice low and edged, emotionless but heavy enough to thicken the air. The vendor paled, a trembling arm dropping a screwdriver with a faint clink. Marcus groaned, palming his face, muttering, "Not helping, fantastic." After tense haggling, mostly Marcus convincing the vendor Veyra wasn't an imminent threat, they left with the regulator, overpriced but not absurdly so. They pressed through the market, the crowd's clamor a relentless wave. Marcus stopped at a grill stall, fat skewers sizzling over flames, their rich scent hitting him hard, stomach growling. He grinned at Veyra. "Try one. You like meat, right?" Her golden eyes lingered on the skewer, hesitant, then she took one, fingers gripping the wooden stick like a weapon. She bit cautiously, as if it might be a trap, her face flashing surprise, a spark in her cold gaze. "How's it?" Marcus teased, hands on hips. "Not bad," she said, voice soft but honest, ears twitching in confirmation. Marcus laughed, a rare, hearty sound cutting through the chaos. "Told you you've got taste after all." The joy didn't last. As they turned into a dim alley, plasma lamps fading overhead, three hulking figures blocked their path. Marcus froze, eyes narrowing at the red claw painted on their armor, black talon, ruthless bounty hunters known for leaving no quarry alive. Their leader, a brute with a spiked cyberarm glinting in the light, stepped forward, grinning with metal teeth. "Marcus Drayce, been a while," he rumbled, voice like an engine's growl. "Got an old debt to settle." Marcus grimaced, hands raised in a futile peace gesture. "Dead? I don't remember," he snapped, voice pitching, mind scrambling for any past grudge. "Doesn't matter," the merc snarled, drawing a plasma pistol, its blue glow flaring in the dark. "My boss wants your head and the Kryon's too." Veyra snapped into a fighting stance, muscles taut beneath her bronze skin, golden eyes blazing, ears rigid like ready blades. "Wait!" Marcus yelled, arms flailing to hold her back. "We can talk this out." But the merc fired, a blue streak ripping the air, and chaos erupted. Veyra moved like a wraith, her body spinning midair with flawless precision, honed from a lifetime of war. She downed the first with a single blow, smashing his wrist with a sickening crack, his gun clattering free. The second swung a knife, its blade flashing, but she dodged with fluid grace, planting a kick to his chest that sent him crashing through a wooden stall, debris exploding amid panic screams. Marcus dove to the ground, rolling from a plasma bolt, dust coating him as he shouted, "Don't turn this into a war zone, please!" A deafening boom shook the street, trembling the ground. A small ship eerily like the one from days ago landed amid the fleeing crowd, its door hissing open, disgorging 5 more armored mercs, weapons gleaming. But their eyes locked on Veyra, not Marcus, marking her as the true prize. "You're the real target," Marcus muttered, yanking his hidden pistol free, fingers shaky on the grip. "You know them, don't you?" Veyra gritted her teeth, clutching a knife from her belt, its blade catching the light. "Foreign corporation," she said, voice sinking, heavy with unspoken burden. "They want me for something I took." Before he could press, a merc fired a plasma grenade their way, its glowing orb rolling with a deadly tick-tick. Marcus reacted fast, shoving Veyra aside, both tumbling behind a stall as it detonated a thunderous boom, fire and smoke swallowing the noise. His ears rang, dust choking him, but he yelled through it. "What thing?" Veyra looked up, golden eyes tense for the first time, stripped of their usual defiance. "A power core," she rasped, firm despite the strain. One that could shift the galaxy's balance. Marcus blinked, mind reeling, then cursed inwardly before spitting out. Perfect, now I'm an accomplice. Smoke and panic screams engulfed the air as Marcus and Veyra tore through the chaotic throng at Halvar Station. Plasma gunfire erupted behind them, blue streaks shredding the atmosphere, leaving a scorched tang and molten craters in the uneven ground. Marcus led the charge, his old boots slipping on grime and oil-slick dust, clutching his pistol tight, breaths heaving from his chest like an engine on the brink of collapse. "Follow me!" he shouted, voice fraying in the cacophony, eyes darting through the crowd for an escape. Veyra kept pace behind him, tall and agile, her every move a precision strike honed by war, golden eyes scanning the pursuing mercenaries, long ears twitching to catch each deadly sound. They veered into a narrow alley, flanked by towering, rusted metal walls pocked with dents and scars from past brawls. The heavy thud of boots echoed closer, relentless as a death knell, driving them onward. Marcus guided her through a shortcut, breath ragged, sweat soaking his shirt down his spine. At the alley's end loomed the Stellar Wraith in the shipyard, a weathered, hulking beast among lesser vessels, poised to roar back to life. "Get to the ship, now!" Marcus yelled, pointing to the airlock, legs pumping despite screaming muscles. But as they neared, a figure emerged from the yard shadows, blocking their path like a living barricade. Marcus skidded to a halt, boots scraping, gripping his gun until his knuckles blanched. Before them stood another Kryon woman, taller than Veyra, her presence commanding as a warlord from legend. Silver-white hair cascaded like an icy torrent, glinting under the yard's dim lights, a deep scar slicing her angular face from brow to jaw, her left eye a milky slash of menace. "Veyra," she intoned, voice cold as frost, sharp as a drawn blade. "Did you think you could run forever?" Marcus flicked a glance at Veyra, gun still raised, heart hammering. "Friend of yours?" he asked, voice low, laced with doubt. Veyra's jaw clenched, muscles tensing, her golden eyes flaring like wildfire against a foe. "No," she growled, deep and heavy with suppressed rage. "That's Clyra, my old commander. She sold me out to Vorin." Marcus blinked, mind racing to piece together the fragments she dropped in mere minutes. Clyra's lips curled, a frigid smile devoid of warmth scarring her face, as she drew an energy sword from its sheath. The blade ignited, blue light dancing along its edge, humming with a lethal buzz as plasma activated. "You stole the power core," she said, voice even but dripping with venom. "Destroyed our team, and now you flee like a coward? Hand it over or die." The sword arced upward, its glow casting stark shadows across her scarred visage, her eyes piercing like icy daggers. Marcus whirled to Veyra, eyes wide, voice breaking in panic. "You actually have it?" Veyra didn't answer at first, her hands slipping into her jacket, pulling out a small metal orb no bigger than his fist. It shimmered with an eerie blue glow, like a star trapped in steel, swirling energy veins pulsing alive on its surface. "I took it," she said, voice sinking, gaze unwavering on Clyra, "to stop Vorin from forging a weapon of annihilation." Marcus's mouth fell open, staring at the orb, then her, a flood of questions he had no time to voice. Clyra didn't wait. She lunged, sword slashing with terrifying speed, its edge shrieking through the air. Veyra reacted instantly, twisting aside, the blade missing her shoulder by inches, leaving a searing wake. "Run!" she roared, seizing Marcus's arm with a Kryon's strength, yanking him toward the Stellar Wraith. He stumbled, nearly falling, but adrenaline held him upright, boots pounding as they raced for the airlock. They burst into the ship, the door slamming shut with a harsh thud, sealing out Clyra's furious bellow and the mercenaries' pounding steps. Marcus dove for the cockpit, hands slamming the controls, fingers trembling as he fired the engines. The power core's hiss surged, the ship quaking like an old beast roused to fury, engines roaring. Veyra braced at the hatch, wielding a scavenged plasma pistol, firing blue bolts through the slit, pinning their pursuers back. "Hurry!" she snarled, voice sharp, eyes fixed on the enemy. A plasma round struck the hull, a deafening boom rocking them, shields flickering as they teetered on overload. Marcus gritted his teeth, gripping the yoke, sweat streaking his face. "Kale, get us out!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Trying, Captain!" Kale replied, urgency replacing its usual snark. The engines screamed a final roar, the ship lurching skyward, dust and flame spewing as it broke free, piercing Halvar's thick atmosphere. Fading plasma blasts echoed behind, swallowed by distance as they breached the black clouds, plunging into the void's silent dark. Marcus slumped in his seat, hands falling from the controls, gasping like he'd sprinted a galaxy. Sweat drenched him, heart pounding to burst free. He turned to Veyra, still clutching the glowing core, its light bathing her sharp features, her golden eyes now heavy with unspoken weight. "You owe me one hell of a story," he rasped, exhaustion mingling with curiosity. Veyra met his gaze, her eyes deep as the void outside, nodding faintly. "I'll tell it," she said, voice soft but firm. "But first, we survive." Marcus gave a dry, honest laugh, rubbing his neck, a habit born of stress. "Liking this already?" he muttered, staring into the black ahead, stars twinkling like tiny fires in the endless night. He knew the core in Veyra's hands wasn't just an object, it was a curse, a promise, the spark of a war he'd never signed up for. But here he was, a human beside an unyielding Kryon and a battered ship, facing whatever waited beyond. The Stellar Wraith streaked through the deep void, starlight streaking past the cockpit like luminous rain, leaving Halvar and its hunters lost in the chaos behind. The ship trembled faintly, engines rumbling, a reminder of their defiance, exhausted but alive after the mad escape. Marcus slumped in the pilot's chair, hands cradling his head, fingers threading through sweat-soaked brown hair. "I just wanted to buy some damn supplies," he muttered, self-mocking, eyes closing as if to erase the memory of plasma fire and Clyra's rage. Yet his lips twitched upward, a weary smile hinting at something more than frustration. Veyra sat across from him, hands still wrapped around the power core, its small, metallic form pulsing blue, a captive star in her grasp. Its glow softened her hard edges, casting a gentle light on her face. She looked up, golden eyes meeting his, not the fierce blaze of battle or pride, but a rare calm. "You could have left me when they attacked," she said, voice quiet but raw with truth, a confession unfamiliar to her tongue. "Why didn't you?" Marcus frowned, hands dropping, his gaze locking with hers. "Leave you to fight that mob alone? Not my style," he said, voice low and steady, no hesitation. He tilted his head, a faint smirk forming. "Besides, who'd fix my ship if you died? Kale sure as hell can't." A spark flickered in Veyra's eyes, and she let out a soft, almost inaudible laugh, enough to warm the cockpit's tight space. She studied him longer, the coldness in her gaze thawing, replaced by a strange warmth, like a star she'd forgotten. "You're different," she said, voice a near whisper. Marcus shrugged, standing to stretch, joints popping after hours of strain. "Take it as a compliment," he replied, grin widening with a rare mischief. He turned to the console, fingers brushing the star map. "So, where to next, Kryon warrior?" Veyra rose, stepping beside him, tall yet no longer towering. She gazed into the black beyond, then smiled, genuine, unguarded, a small but radiant curve mirroring the core's light. "Your call," she said, her tone carrying trust he hadn't expected. Marcus laughed, a loud, echoing sound banishing the lingering tension. "Liking this already?" he said, flipping the controls, sending the Stellar Wraith hurtling into the cosmic dark. As the ship melded with the void, Marcus knew his life had just gotten infinitely more complicated, a core that could reshape galaxies, an unbreakable Kryon at his side, a looming war shadowing their path. But for the first time in years, it didn't scare him. With Veyra, with the Stellar Wraith, he wasn't just surviving, he was alive, truly alive, and ahead lay a journey worth fighting for.